Okay,
Yeah.
it's 5:30, so I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Everyone, welcome. Thanks for being here. First, we'll do a roll call. Please note that all directors are present in person. Do I have a volunteer to read the mission and vision statement? Great, go ahead, Director Zander.
At Decorah Community School District, we embrace student learning and well-being as our fundamental purpose. We will, in partnership with our students, families, and community, make the world a better place. The mission of the Decorah Community School District is learning, thriving, creating our legacy. The vision of the Decorah Community School District is Decorah Community School District will be a collaborative, innovative, learning-centered organization empowering students to embrace their personal strengths and create their future.
Okay, next I'll ask for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we have two items on our special board meeting agenda. And the first is the review of the timeline for selection of construction manager at risk.
So I put this document in the board packet. I worked with Jamie last week after the board meeting. And this just kind of I'll walk through a little bit on the timeline. And you notice that one thing it says is it's subject to change as directed by the district. But as of today, posted on, I think, Iowa Builders, I don't know exactly the website, Iowa Builders, Master Builders, and on our website, we've posted that we have an intent to issue a request for qualifications. So that is required to be up for 14 days, 13 days, I guess. So then on July 1, we'll issue the actual request for qualifications. Those will be due July 15th. We'll have the week of July 15th through July 22nd to vet applications and then pick the ones that we want for RFPs from. The RFPs will be due on August 5th. Then that sets up an opportunity to do interviews the rest of that week, August 6th through the 9th. And if possible, have a ranked completed evaluation ready for the board meeting on August 12th. So, and Jamie had a little, that was a little bit more aggressive because I just wanted to hit the board meeting, but are there any notes, and I'm going to defer to Nick, on that process that you think the board should know about or is significant there?
Some of those are just minimum requirements for length of time, so you have a gap in time and how long the RFQ can be out. The minimum amount, I believe, is 13 years. So, and then also from right now to when you issue the RFQ, there's a minimum of certain amount of days and you're just hitting those requirements. The review of all of the proposals or all of the qualification packets gets done on a numbering basis. And then the way that how it's worded in the RFQ decides then whether you get proposals from the qualifying through the RFQ numbering process, whether you get proposals from those contractors or not.
And Jamie and I talked a little bit about that. She kind of explained like could set a percentage of how many you want to take or how many you want to look at. Like I forget, I think she was saying you could either take maybe the top 80. If you're like over 80%, you qualify. That's the process.
It was 80 points.
80 points.
The way that we've done it, that we're currently doing it in Williamsburg, and that was off a recommendation from Master Builders.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's a numbering system of I'm assuming it's basically a total of 100 points, and then everyone that scores over an 80, then you get a proposal from them, and then you can decide. You do not have to interview, but you can decide whether you'd like to interview all three.
Okay. And then so we've got just the intent to issue right now, and so the work now is between now and July 1st is to get the request for qualifications ready to go. And Jamie's already sent me a rough draft of that, so. We'll look at that this week and finalize that, and I can share it out with the board, but just kind of making sure the board understood the process and the timeline of how we think we could be ready by the August meeting for that.
So this is Nick Hildebrandt. Thank you so much for being here in person. Nick is
Yeah.
an architect with Emergent Architects, Emergent Engineering, and he's here to architect. I know it's for something. Emergent Architecture.
Somewhere around there.
Does the board have any other questions for Nick about this process? Or the
Well,
proposed timeline?
How many, yes. Not RFQ. Because how many people, how many companies actually submitted for the Williamsburg project before the RFQs?
There were 11.
It was like,
Yeah,
Hmm.
so we just received all of them last Thursday.
okay.
Yeah.
Then you probably not ready, you'll be in that scoring process.
We're in the scoring process right now, yes.
And is there criteria that they use, is it similar to what, have you seen this document that,
Currently, it's the
yeah,
exact.
is it the
thing.
same, it's the
Yeah,
same criteria?
And that's, there's, several kind of examples of RFQs out there. Some of them are from contractors themselves, some of them are from master builders or, you know, other entities that have helped put together some pieces like that, so.
So the scoring mechanism.
Yeah.
So this is real new to school because it's only been less than 2 years, I think, to be able to do this, but master builders have probably been going through this process for years. The request for qualifications for the at-risk program, I would assume.
I mean, getting a contractor on board at risk is a common practice for the private world.
Mhm.
So I mean, in whatever you kind of want to call it, but there's specific things that the legislature put in place to control a little bit, not control, but require you to jump through some hoops to get a CM at risk involved with the project. Which kind of requires some vetting of having several people or
Sure.
several contractors provide proposals.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's spelled out in the legislature on how the process is kind of, and that's where these 14 days for the certain things come into play. Yeah. Some of them have time restrictions and some of them don't have time restrictions. And it's also a little bit interpretive at this point, and we've been visiting significantly with master builders in Iowa, which is the organization that many contractors are members of.
Sure.
And outside of Williamsburg, are you aware of anybody else who's gone this way?
Yeah, we are currently working with Hampton Dumont
Oh, with the CMAR as
with
well?
CM at risk. Yep.
Okay,
And they have a contractor on board currently.
okay.
And we recently just bid a project with them as the CM at risk.
I noticed at Waterloo on their website, they also are doing CMA.
Perfect.
Any other questions about the proposed schedule?
Will we be having board meetings to go?
So that's a great question for is there any, interrupted, I'm sorry. Are there any board meetings, like when we do the vetting and review the qualifications, that need board approval or that just
Well, so
committee?
one of the big questions is who will all be
Okay,
pointing out, doing the points and reviewing the qualifications, because it is quite a process. And so it doesn't specify exactly how that has to be done.
and it doesn't require board approval to do that, but we could have a board approval step.
You could have a board approval step in there.
Okay,
You
How
could
did they
have,
do it in Williamsburg? Who did it?
we're right in the middle of the reviewing of the qualifications, and there are 2 board members that are going to be reviewing qualifications. 2 board members, superintendent and myself.
and I assume that's 2 board members out of 5 or 7, so that it's not a
Same
quorum.
comments here.
Okay. Is that what Hampton Dumont did?
yes, there might have only been one board member.
An exciting process. I think we'll be happy with the decision to pursue this.
Is there a minimum number of proposals that you think is probably the low threshold for what we should be looking for?
I mean, the amount of proposals that we receive or qualifications technically that we receive for Williamsburg. You know, that's got a location closer to Iowa City. But that is a similar scale size project as far as dollar amounts. So that's in the $30 to $40 million range. I would expect you will get 5 to 10 at least. I don't think if you would get less than 3, I think you should consider on whether you have enough participation. I think you'll get similar amounts for this project.
Thank you for gathering the information for us.
Yeah, no other questions.
Okay, I'll continue to provide updates and documents for the board to review. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is to receive an update from the Elementary Facility Committee, and we have so many committee members present in the room tonight, so thank you so much. I thought we'd begin hearing from Nick with, I know that you prepared a few slides.
Yeah.
To inform the community on the process on which we've been on with this committee over the
Yeah.
last many months.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And it's obviously ends up being quite a bit of work. Going through this, we've been, me personally, I've been working on this project, this site for, 10 to 12 years. So it's it's fun to see it materialize into something here. And so just have some really quick slides here. You can go to the next slide. And you kind of jump way ahead. You read your mission statement and all those types of things, and so I don't probably need to spend a ton of time on that, but maybe back one more slide. This reason I want to kind of put your mission statement and everything out there is a lot of the things I can talk about through this process is rooted in your mission statement. And some of those things are collaboration and community, curiosity, creativity, engagement and excellence, and equity and well-being. And so all of these points were at the forefront of the discussion that the group had as we were talking about different possible solutions, as we were talking about the needs at the existing school and how we would come up with something that the community could get behind, as we discussed financing and moving into a possible bond issue, how that affects that, what the solution would look like. And so I just wanted to reiterate that you eloquently spoke them at the beginning of the board meetings. Don't need to kind of really reiterate that, but next slide kind of talks about, how do we make sure that mission and vision emerge through design then for this project? And we feel that getting the admin team involved, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the notes from that. Getting a facility committee with citizens involved, having the community being engaged in this survey, and then having public meetings after this and talking about how we came up with this and why the district is moving forward with this is just important to help pass this and help people feel involved and to get a solution that everyone is going to be excited and proud of. So we can go to the next slide. Some of this work that we've done a lot of in the past, way back in 2013, I did reviews of Don Klein West Side, walking through the spaces and even at that time, we also were talking about the high school as you remember. And so there was some weighing of what's the more important project of elementary versus high school. And actually from a scoring system, the elementaries actually scored at a lower rate than high school did, but there was some impending issues with mechanical system and things at the high school that kind of put the high school on the ballot at that time. So that work was done. We also, I went and toured both of these schools with Dr. Cronin and to make sure, hey, did they, update a whole bunch of stuff? Did you do a whole bunch of things that would kind of change the report? And ultimately that with knowing that, hey, this doesn't really fit from a programming standpoint, it's a tough building type to use. There's not a lot of headspace. There's, 2 sites, wants to be consolidated. We went through that and just reiterated that, hey, we came to the same conclusion that this probably needs to be a replacement situation. And ultimately this group also we had a meeting at John Klein, went and toured the facility, walked around and kind of came up to the same conclusion through visual inspections and kind of walking around and talking to a bunch of the faculty as part of the group. So. Next slide. What we do personally is we call it program verification. And so we look through the existing facility, check to see what size that is, and then did programming for what a new school would start to look like. And as far as from number of classrooms, art rooms, collaboration spaces, ADA spaces, special ed, and as well as making sure the school for the public spaces such as the cafeteria, gymnasium, those types of things are able to handle an amount of students that if you were to see some growth in the future, that we would be able to handle that with the community rooms, commons, kitchens, those types of things. So if you go to kind of the next slide, ultimately the existing schools of Westside and John Klein together are right in that kind of 58,000 range. We're planning for a new school to be in that 86 to 90,000 square foot range. And so that makes sure that we have the amount of rooms that are needed, the spaces are sized correctly. From, kind of an analysis of the two versus each other, John Klein versus a new facility, gymnasium and commons at the existing John Klein is roughly in that 3,000 to 4,000 square foot range, and it's the same space. And in a new facility, we're gonna end up doing at least an 8,000 to 10,000 square foot gym, and we'll be doing a common that's probably, in the 3,000 to 4,000 square foot range. So right there, you gain 10 to 15,000 square feet, and that's just 2 spaces. There's other spaces that are lacking or too small or need additional rooms within the school so that they can deliver education that meets your mission statements. And so I just wanted to kind of point out that that one alone nearly makes up kind of the square foot difference of taking those 2 and just replacing them and getting that size of school. You can go kind of to the next one. The other things, as we met with the admin team, they had already done some work as far as getting feedbacks on, what they want some of those spaces to look like, what they want some of those attributes to be. Go ahead. They threw some of these great pictures in there, which starts to lay out, the feeling of the space, the kind of quality of the design, the things they'd like to see accomplished with the new facility. Ultimately, we had some feedback from the admin team. We did virtual tours of other facilities that have been built around the nation and in the state with both groups. We talked about key learning drivers and design patterns. This is the feedback from the admin team. So as far as priorities, they wanted to make sure that there was a correct traffic pattern inside and outside. That was really kind of number one. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about site and traffic. Community representative and collaborative, that there's the right number of spaces that are correctly sized and conducive to learning. It's safe and welcoming. It has high opportunity for all students for all learning types, which should really be a main focus. And then clear in the design, the value we place on our young learners. And then down there, there's a little bit, some of the key learning drivers, we want to make sure it's safe and secure. We have collaboration and it's connected to the community. And then from a design pattern standpoint, that starts to talk a little bit about the different spaces that they want to really make sure there's importance. We talked about learning studios and suites being important. Cave, that kind of one-on-one space to make sure that we have that in there, welcoming entry. And then, of course, vistas and transparencies. And then teacher collaboration, which maybe isn't supported as well in the current building with space. So that was administration team priorities. Then the next one you can see is the facilities committee. So we asked some similar questions, you know, what are the goals? What are the priorities? And so these are some of those that were listed. We want to make sure we utilize every inch of the building and the site. We want to make sure the usefulness of the space for the district is good, for the community, for transportation, for parking, for safety, that we're hitting all those boxes. Set the standard for the level of education in the district. You know, we want to hold ourselves to a high bar so that, you know, this new facility is a nice jewel for the district, that it can attract people to it. And that's kind of number 4, facility to recruit, retain teachers and community members. One that you're going to take through when they come to town to visit, if they're considering to move here, and be like, hey, this is representative of the Decorah school district. Make sure we continue to be one of the best schools in the state, meet a good value and be fiscally responsible. Developmentally appropriate space allocated and make it safe and an inclusive environment. Another thing that we talked about specifically with the community group was, you know, what are some possible community uses from the building and from the site? And so you can kind of see there some of the things that were brought up as far as park and rec, not only from the site, but the gym. There's high need for elderly and young children to go in the winter. Could there be some indoor space? Youth teams, Girl Scouts, bigger parking, separating bus and parent drop off. And so you can see some of these different ideas that the group felt, hey, as we're thinking and designing and doing these things, is there a way that we can enrich the whole environment there? Not only educationally, but possibly also for the community. And so the last few slides here are really where we landed or started to land from a site standpoint. And so there's been some discussion about this. The unique thing about this is, as you start to look at it, there's not actually really a ton of options, because ultimately you can see right here, this is the existing building. And we think that it would make the most sense for you to be able to keep the students in that school while you're building the new building. And I don't think you want to spend money moving students out of there or getting temp. And so it really starts to limit where that building can fall. And then you can see the size of the footprint of that building. So that's a 75,000 square foot footprint. As we start to keep things at the forefront that are important as far as separating parent drop off and bus drop off. We talked about with the admin team to try to keep the main entrance on this side. That started to make a lot of sense. How do we get green space? There was a lot of discussion about the tennis courts, and we'll be taking the tennis courts. So where could they be located? Ultimately, can we reutilize the space on the site to put some tennis courts on there? And so you can see, if we're trying to get a pretty good sized green space in there, there's only certain ways in which it starts to lay out. And so this was one way. If you go to the next slide, this just starts to move that blue mass a little farther over this way. Reduces maybe a little bit of the parking, a smaller drop-off area, moves some of the playground over here. So that maybe we can use the tennis courts as some of the hard surface. There was a lot of discussion about dual use, the way that it is now. This is the current tennis court, half of it. And so the possibility of keeping a little bit of this space as hard surface playground, during the construction of that starts to move that line over even farther on where that building maybe wants to start to land. And then the next slide really just kind of reiterates that, if this is the existing building, you can see the image of the site laid on the back. Right there is the edge of the existing building, trying to reutilize some of the existing concrete. So really, we're not building anywhere this side until after the existing building is built. And then keeping, the building over here. Could we keep a little bit of this solid surface playground, maybe a little bit of this? To try and build that new building, that new facility over there. And then create green space and the amenities that we're looking for in the new building. Did I miss anything from the explanation standpoint there? So that's really the majority of what I have
Thank you.
for tonight.
Thank you. And we have a lot of facility committee members here in person. And I encourage, it's great to have you here because the public can hear from your perspectives. And during this time, I'd like I'm gonna invite Brad Darling, who's here from the northern part of the county, and I want to invite him to share his perspective first, but board members, please feel free to ask questions as well.
Well, I'm probably one of the few people on the committee that never been inside John Klein until we toured it as part of the committee. It's pretty obvious the spaces are small. Very walled off. I think it's time to tear down and build a new building. And I think that time to do that would be obviously now, because if we decide to do it now and we get this all done, we're still a few years down the road of using John Klein and before the new building's done. And I think the committee, we've met for what now, 5-6 months, and it's very obvious we want to build the right building for the right price. We don't want to go overboard with above and beyond what we need, but we want a very functioning building with functioning spaces. Not desks in the hallway where we're trying to work with kids and work around other people. Such as some of my thoughts is, I was surprised to go inside. The outside of the building looks pretty good. And there was just the amount of kids in those rooms is really surprising.
Mhm. Thanks for sharing, Brad.
I grew up nearby in Cresco, and the first time I was ever in the John Klein School was for ballroom dancing lessons with Renata Hunter in 2011. And I think the only thing that's aged worse than my dancing skills is the school. I think back to that time when I saw that then, and my wife and I were living in Ridgeway at the time in the Howard Wynn School District. And we, at that point in time, were thinking of where do we go with our children down the road? And there was already those discussions soon thereafter in the coming years about, we're gonna build a new school. If you've been at it for 11 or 12 years or whatever that is, that was when that excitement engaged us as parents. And we intentionally moved into the district, made an effort to be in that district, wanted our kids to have some opportunities that this great school district has, and the history of it, of all these years of performance. And we've now aged through one child that in theory could have been a part of those initial discussions. Our second child will be a second grader next year. And so I think about my relationship to this project through an evolution of a direct user of my children being there to now having to transition to a benefactor of a decision like this. I will not get the benefit of my children getting a new school, but it is no less important to me as I look at how this school impacts our community, how it impacts our district, and how it impacts what we show we care about in this community. And as a benefactor, I get to be in a school district in which my kids still have a thriving thing, that has community leaders that believe in the school district, that needs the tools and resources that it has to continue the level of excellence that we've already established. And as an employer, I look at how I have to recruit people. And when I have positions within our financial institution and bank that we have to recruit, we look at that. People ask, what is the school district like? How does this work? And we have a weighted young staff that have young kids. And I also have been so fortunately benefit to work with the economic development of the county for the last 10 years, in which many of the years I've been president. And it's constantly talking about how do we recruit new workers? How do we rebuild this next generation of workforce? Well, that comes from not only recruiting from the outside and people being drawn to our community, but starting from day one of showing the people the value that this community brings and giving them the experience that they can start that early and get education off on the right foot and have our own homegrown talent. And so there's not a better time than now. There is a number of reasons why we have a passionate community that oftentimes we get in our own way of wanting it to be perfect instead of just progress and moving forward. And that's a blessing that we have that passion, but we have to get past the perfect and the forsaken of good. And we have to move this forward. We have to get the community support and know that we can't do it without it. This is no longer a viable option. John Klein is past its age life and it's time to move forward with that project.
I won't repeat what's already been stated. I'm probably one of the newer residents that has been on the facility committee. Steve Slesser, my wife and I have been here for 3 years. We have 2 kids that, like Mark, probably won't benefit at this point from a new school, but still very passionate that this needs to move forward. The reputation of the Decorah School District obviously is renowned across the state. My wife and I knew that coming in. So we were surprised to see the state of the John Klein facility. That really frankly took us off guard. We talked about it, not that it was a huge decision point at that point in time for us, but we talked about it before we moved here, specifically about that school and that building. The one other point, I don't think there's going to be any disagreement that this building needs to be rebuilt from anybody that walks inside of it or hears stories through it. I think that's not in doubt. So then the question is just, when are we gonna do it? And why is now the right time to do it? Now's the right time to do it because next year is gonna be worse. 5 years from now is going to be worse. 10 years from now is going to be worse. I've had the opportunity to work in many big construction projects in my career. Right now, the project at WinMed is gonna be my third over $20 million. And every time I engage in one of those projects, I think to myself, wow, that was expensive. So at Allen Hospital, $22 million rollout project, wow, that's expensive. Then at Independence, a $30 million medical office building. Wow, that was expensive. What happened to that $22 million project we were able to do? That was pretty much the same size. Then $50 million project at WinMed. Wow, that was expensive. And you know what I'm gonna think 15 years from now when I do another project? Oh my gosh, where'd that $50 million price tag go? I want that back. That's gonna seem cheap. If you don't do it now, and you wait 5 years, you wait 10 years, it's gonna be much worse, the state of the building. Many more kids will come through it, and the price tag is just gonna keep exponentially rising. I think we all know that. I'm in broad support of doing this project, rebuilding it and doing it now.
My name is Marcy Dodd. I have been teaching kindergarten for 11 years at John Klein, so I have firsthand experience every day of working in that building. So on the facilities committee, we have decided that tear down and rebuild is the best option. You know, I remember when the studies were done, was it 9-10 years ago? That was when we needed to tear it down, and fast forward to 2024, and it's still there. So we just feel like now's the time, and with the Donovan Group survey, people that responded, I forget what the percentage. Yeah, it was a high percentage of in favor for this, so I just feel like we've got the community on board with us. I remember the placement, where is this place gonna go was the hot topic for, I don't know, ever. And now we have the land for it. So it just feels like now is the time, and with like Steve said, the price of things are just gonna get more and more expensive, and we wanna be fiscally responsible and think about that. We don't want the Taj Mahal, but we wanna build what's best for our kids and our staff and the community.
Marcy, as a teacher, could you talk about some of the inadequacies of the building from when you first?
Oh, yeah, I don't even know. Well, not enough bathrooms for adults. I have to go to the bathroom in the classroom and hold the handle so nobody comes and opens the door on me because the bathroom is way down the hall and I can't do that with my 5-year-olds.
And there's only 3, so there's long waits.
Yes.
For those bathrooms, that's wasted time for
Yeah,
the things you need to do as a teacher.
the roof, we have leaks all the time. I haven't had a leak in my room. One of the rooms I was in, I had 12 buckets one day and it was leaking from the lights. Like,
So I just want to repeat that. You had 12 buckets in your classroom
in my
collecting
classroom.
water
Yes.
in one classroom.
In one classroom, yeah. And then it got fixed and then it leaked again. It was coming out of the lights. Everything I know about water and electricity is they don't mix, but nobody was overly concerned, so we went with it, and now my new room has never leaked. And now we had a huge puddle of water on the floor. I was telling the kids, who spilled their water bottle? Who was it? Just tell me, we'll clean it up. And realized it was a leak in there now as well, and that, I've been in that room for 8 years and it's never leaked, and it's now leaking.
Just at West Side, the same thing, like we had an entire closet, a whole ceiling dig through and every single thing was ruined. Tons and tons of toys, that, all of the ceiling tiles like are brown. Kids look up, they're like, why is that brown? It's just because they keep getting ruined over and over, or they're completely gone, so you can see just everything that's up there, the walls, that moves all the way through. One wall looks like a little bit like a horror scene, because it was like reddish stuff, so it's throughout the building that we need to,
Yeah. Electrical, I think I have 4 outlets in my room. Yeah, and I just plug in my computer. I've got a BenQ board that has to be placed based on where the outlet is. A pencil sharpener, all those things that
And
get
their
mixed
iPad
up.
cart.
iPad cart, and we can't use, based on the code, we can't use extension cords, we can't use, so it's very tricky. No common space, so when there's indoor recess, I don't know if you've been with 22 5-year-olds from 8 to 3. And when they're trapped inside all day, and when it's inside recess, we don't have anywhere for them to go and just let out that energy and run around. And so a common space, because our lunchroom is being used as a lunchroom, and we can't use that as a common space for the kids to kind of run around and let out.
Lunchroom and gym are the same space.
Lunchroom, gym, commons.
Which
assembly
dictates
area.
the whole day to a
Yes.
certain extent,
Yeah.
the special.
They really fill up.
Yeah, I mean, that
Okay.
dictates our schedule. And then that space is not available until 2:15 at the earliest, based on when lunches get done and cleanup. There's no collaborative space for teachers to meet during the day. We sometimes have to have specials in our classroom because there's no other place for the kids to go. There isn't enough space. So it's just hard to take all your stuff out when it's supposed to be your prep time, or be in the classroom, but then the kids want to hang out with you and ask you questions. Yeah, I mean, there's so
space for
many.
AA.
That's right.
Yeah,
services,
AA
like
services.
speech, OT, sometimes
Or
they
even
might be in the hall.
When we have parent volunteers, there's no quiet place for them to go. Testing, when we do our testing, we're in the hallways. Kids are walking through and it's just very disruptive when they have 60 seconds to do the best they can on their sounds or whatever the test may be.
And those working with the AA are the students who are the highest need for academics or for speech, and they're already distracted. And then here goes a class of 22, 23 kids, so getting them to focus their.
Having the ability to just have a space where kids they have sensory overload and just being able to calm down, just going to a quiet space. We don't have anything like that. It's being occupied by another teacher who's trying to teach kids, and so I know that just sounds like a lot of things, but There's so much.
Say the health concerns, finding mold in the building, having
Yeah.
your reports of health concerns.
Air quality.
Bloody noses, things like
Yeah.
that, that parents,
Air conditioning.
I would say
All throughout the
the heat is.
wasps. They're not bees, they're wasps infestations.
And we hear a lot of people say, well, when I went to school, it didn't matter. We didn't have air conditioning, but when you get that many kids in that size of building without airflow and things like that, especially those internal rooms, it's unbearable. We had one year, kids getting sick, like 5 kids went home sick just because of being overheated. I'd say technology at West Side is a huge one too, and I think there's connection problems at John Klein, but it's just with how old the building is, like we can't connect, we can't access a lot of the technology that we need to teach 21st century skills.
I used to have to, when I taught first grade, take my computer to the hall to connect it. And then take the kids' iPads and then bring it back to my room. Even though there was something right outside our room that.
And just having the space, shelving to have things accessible for the kids to just go grab and get. We're having to find shelves and buy shelves and put them in there ourselves. So just thinking about accessibility for the kids and the materials and supplies that they need throughout the day. I should have come up with this.
Well, then I would say like staff morale.
It's a good start.
Yeah, staff morale and things like that, like going to a building that's really rough every day, the no bathroom and things like that just gets, I think wears on people a lot. We have some of the best teachers around and it's a lot.
Yeah,
Well, thank you all for all that you do.
so we're
Day after day.
excited for this opportunity to teach in a different building,
Mhm.
but also for our students and the community.
I might highlight just adding on to that, just the timing. Again, this has been in the works for many, many, many years, but again, just talking about trying to be efficient. Not only we're doing West Side, John Klein and the buildings and management, but in today's society, again, with our shortage of staff and personnel, again, we've divided that where again, the building, bring people together under one roof. Will again, help with that efficiency for cost management, but also just staff management, the ability to have space that is not driven by a gym, will maximize basically time of instruction, less transitions. The list could go on and on with those things too. So from that efficiency of just finance and management and time for best practice instruction are only going to increase with the sooner the better, going back to that time.
The one thing I'd like to just add is, I mean, you hear it echoed throughout every in order to retain and recruit top level teachers and to put kids in the best environment possible, pretty obvious that something needs to change. And I don't think I think the teachers would be the first to say that they're willing to roll up their sleeves and get after it and do what's absolutely in the best interest of students. But after a while, that wears on it, and it wears on your morale, your culture, and then that starts to impact the students. No matter how hard they work, no matter what they're willing to do to put on that happy, energetic face every day, it starts to wear, and like Mr. Barney said, when you take that and then combine scheduling like frustrations and the constant influx of cleaning rooms and putting out flyers or cans or whatever. There's too many distractions that then take away from the education of the students. And ultimately, that's what needs to be the focus of this conversation. What is best for our students? And what's best for our staff and our teachers so that we can recruit and retain and then help them stay at that top level that impacts our students. And we can sit here and argue about this and that and timing, where, and why. But in the end, it's students and it's our staff, and it needs to be the focus of the next 40 to 50 years. And the sooner we can do that and not miss another generation of students, would be, yeah, very, very helpful for the community.
Mhm. So it's been said that the committee has, this is a beautiful cross-section of people in our community. I see people that work in insurance and real estate, school staff, finance and banking, farming, CEO of the hospital. We have this is only a section of the giant facility committee that has gathered.
Representatives from the city council and.
City council, there's also a city council meeting right now, so they have not been able to join. You've been talking for 6 months. What's next? Can anyone speak to that of a future meeting or end goal?
I think our goal would be to bring a project to you guys
Mhm,
to go forward with.
mhm,
And you saw some of the drawings earlier, and we've seen those, and some of the stuff that he mentioned was feedback that we had during our meetings.
mhm,
And, but we need to get on July 2nd.
mhm.
So I think on the second, we're gonna look at some of that stuff and hopefully come back with you guys with kind of a final
Mhm,
proposal of what we all agree upon.
mhm,
And a budget.
Yeah,
mhm,
and a budget, and hopefully, let you guys run with it, us run with it to the public and
mhm,
get it out.
mhm.
In tying to that, I think it's also, this has been a long process. I mean, we've met a number of times for meetings at length. And I think it's important to point out too that, like, we're looking at it from a number of angles. We understand the constraints of what the school brings, what we need, but we also understand the constraints of what it means to build a school, what it means to the constituents of this community, and how we afford a school and how we fund a school. A couple points of context too, just is like, one thing that was very interesting to me through developing during this point is also understanding on what it means to build a school now versus what it meant to build 12 years ago when we started and 50 years ago when this one was built. And when we show a need to increase square footage by 25,000 square feet, that's not just because we have a big wish list. This is by requirement, this is by law, this is by standards set forth by departments of education. This is by modern day teaching methods and how this works. It isn't just out of, willy-nilly, we want to, make it big and make it pretty. These are things that we've talked about and how we can make this a practical approach, that we can get it done. And we want to come to you with a viable option that puts you guys in a good situation to move forward with an opportunity to pass a bond, and to get this project done. So, yeah, I mean, when you say what's next, it's bring you something that you guys all get to say yea or nay to and find our next steps forward.
Mhm.
I've been involved with Nick for all those years, and maybe even a little bit longer. So this is nothing gives more exciting than many, many years and tenure on the school board to finally be able to say we got some land purchase. We know where the school's gonna go. And your facility committee was put in place for a reason, and you guys have done a great job, and we stayed out of the way and let you do what you needed to do, and work with Nick and administration, and everybody else, and we know that you guys put lots and lots of effort into this, a lot of thought into it, with the teachers, everything else, and it's exciting to be here, and I think as multiple people have said, we know we need a new John Klein school, so it's time to move forward, and it's too bad it didn't happen previously, but we got the hurdle bought, or we got the land bought, and that hurdle's behind us, so it's great you're here to make a recommendation, and it sounds like you'll be back shortly in the next few weeks and firm up your recommendation to us. Is that correct? I think that's.
As said, our next meeting is July 2nd, and with any luck, we'll have our kind of finalized plans. And then there's a board meeting July 8th that we can bring an official recommendation to the board at that meeting. So that's the timeline. It's in pen, it's not in pencil, so.
Getting back to a few of the comments that have been made, I think Mark said it quite well, and this is about the students, it's about the teachers, but it's about enriching the lives of our students, and that's priority number one. Then I think talking a little bit more about the financial perspective of this, and going back to your comment that, building the hospital, the first hospital is 22 and the next is 30 and this is 50. Let's talk a little bit more, not in granular terms, but in broad scope about what the cost of construction is for a residential home versus hospital versus what we are going to be looking at. And then we can place multiplying so that maybe the number makes a little bit more sense for the public, that it's not a pie in the sky number or, a wish list or something like that, but this is actually the cost of what it's gonna take, not a random number. So I don't know if I want to turn to you or.
Well, I think we've been working on that. I think from July 8th, I think we'll have that for to have it narrowed down pretty good.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff we maybe not say trimmed, but the site plan, part of the site plan is, can we do that to make it feasible? It's definitely been talking.
I think Nick probably has nightmares of all the different levels of blueprints that we've asked him to reiterate, and I think it's around V 1.2, 7, 10, 12. But yeah, I think that I would say too, I think that, we've honed that in and we're getting really close to a number that we think would be confident to, set forth and give some ideas of how that would be funded. Contextually, when you reference other projects, I can tell you that from the finance side and working at a bank over the last 3 years, I have not seen a single project come in within planned budget. I think that gap of it's coming off. So we could be in an opportunistic time where that planning scale, we aren't chasing the far end of that as much as we had been seeing. Where you plan for X and your X plus, that is a gap that's narrowing. I think we're in a little bit of a weird donut hole too, where there's I heard you reference the number of bidders that are bidding commercial work that I'm seeing from the bank side is there's some organizations that are looking to fill that backlog of work. That rate environment that was high has a long tail that turns off some of the business, the stuff that's already in forward motion 2 years ago when we started increasing rates. It can't undo itself. It was the stuff that started planning then. So I think if we can get this done, it could align with kind of a construction donut hole where there's some opportunity to get some people on and make a bidding environment more competitive, I would hope, where we're getting, well into those higher numbers of people that are interested in that work. But I guess we'll find out. Never say never.
Can I just come back to, something you were up to you and maybe to Shanna also? I've been asked by many people, what are the benefits of consolidating West Side and John Klein and having the pre-K with the students at John Klein? Can you just talk a little bit about what the benefits of that would be?
I'll start, I guess, right off the bat. I think some of those things where I was just trying to frame in a short segment there with just the management, not only efficiency between the two buildings with, heat and cost, but, custodians and mowing and upkeep. All of those things are there, sharing of resources, just with teaching, resources. And then going back to staff, we know right now, there's a shortage everywhere, from teachers to paras to custodians, all of those things. So the ability to share what we have, more efficiency, is always going to be a plus. I think going back to just, again, that goes back to time management, the ability to share the resources within that whole, pre-K through second grade. And I think that will tie into, the scheduling and efficiency of using facilities, those things could go on and on. I think that's another thing.
Yeah, I would just throw in the collaboration piece, being able to have preschool in the same building as TK and kindergarten, then jump from preschool to TK and kindergarten is huge. It is a really big jump. So having those people so they can collaborate and work together on those things and those transitions, I think is really big. Smaller things, we do family events and things like that. And so just all being in the same building so we can bring people together. I think that's some of the big things. And like Rick said, the shared staff, it maybe doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're going back and forth, and there's one day I went back and forth 8 times between the two, and just that wasted time is huge. Another thing with the shared staff, like I think about safety and some of those things. So those who aren't aware, West Side doesn't currently have an administrative assistant. We don't have anyone who's answering a door. For the start of the year, we were, knocking on windows and trying to make things work. And now we have a buzzer that teachers are stopping instruction or a para is leaving to answer that door. So I think for us at West Side, coming over to have the staff to support that and this issue is a big one too. So I think all of those things combined, but the collaboration is huge.
And West Side has 2 classrooms and Head Start's moved out.
Correct. Head Start is moving out, so it'll be out, and so we have 2 classrooms. We're doing a little bit of switching, so we'll have kind of a 3-year-old space as well, because we have more and more students, so we're kind of differentiating a bit, but.
What do you think about utilization of space? It's.
Oh, it's a very big building.
Very big building that we're using because we need space for 2 classrooms.
Correct, but we tried to move to John Klein. There truly is not room for preschool at John Klein. It does not meet the needs of our students.
I think we go back to do this even best practice in anything. You talk about early childhood. Early childhood goes, it's our preschool, but it does really continue all the way through our early elementary grades. So I think the ability to bring those all in the same facility and center will just resonate that even more and bring that to the forefront, because a lot of times when you lose that element, everybody, now we're up and we're losing some of those early childhood best practices. So I think that would be an exciting thing to just have those available in the same site.
And just one more thing, just one last transition for our early childhood kids, if we can be in one building, we're asking our youngest learners to have one more transition. I think that's a big deal at that age.
Thank you.
Well, I can still remember, actually blazed in my memory, an August day in 1970, going to my first day of school at John Klein Kindergarten, being dropped off by my mom, and how excited I was to go into that building. I remember specifically asking her as I was getting out of the car, "So Mom, which one's the numbers and which one's the letters?" Because I was afraid I was gonna screw them up. But that was a good enough facility then, but it's not now. That was 54 years ago. An average school life expectancy is probably 40 years if it's, well taken care of. And to think that this thing is sat there for 54 years and I could still walk around the hall and like, yep. It's time. This is long overdue, and it could be one of the greatest days of our school board career. Certainly when I first came on, it wasn't too long till we voted on the bond issue for the high school. And that was a really great day. And whenever we finally get John Klein approved, that'll be another really great day.
Yeah, as Nick said earlier, that, John Klein had needs at the high school, probably more needs in high school, but not the needs that we had to take care of at that particular time, with boilers and different things. So the need was there, and it's exciting to be able to go forward and hear from you folks again, and get a timeline out there, get some investment from the public, and get the public more up to speed in where we're at and what we're doing, and be very, very open with them, and get the public behind this process and move forward.
That's great. Any final questions or comments?
I just appreciate all of your hard work. I know it's been a lot of time and a lot of collaboration and work on your part. We really appreciate it.
I do know you guys have put lots and lots and lots of work into this, and you're really, really, really invested in, and yeah, thanks to all of you guys. It's been a long process and very much appreciated.
Absolutely. Okay, hearing no other comments, I'll adjourn the meeting.